Welcome to the Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Marchese. Alongside me, my buddy, my pal, Jeff Azaparty.
Don't speak Twitter. For me. I didn't say that. I never agreed to that term. I'm just a co-host. Jerk.
Sorry. My co-host and barely an acquaintance, Jeff Azaparty.
We never see each other anymore. It's kind of crazy after how much time we used to spend together. It's insane.
I know. We don't have literally every single weekday we spent together.
Seriously.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, well, maybe
in a
we should
small
bring
room.
that up.
Yeah, for hours. Yeah, let's not talk about that. That's
weird. Not great, Bob. You can follow us on Twitter at MattyMoore89, at J_party, and at front4 fantasy. So we actually have some news to talk about. So we'll lead with that and the fantasy kind of repercussions that come along with it. But Justin Fields finally named the starter for the Chicago Bears. And
finally, he actually gets the endorsement from his coach for a change. Not if Andy Dalton's healthy, he's our guy. Andy Dalton's the starter.
Yeah.
And all three quarterbacks are up in the air and we can use any of them. Like,
imagine how you feel if you're Justin Fields and you're being compared to Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. Yeah, like that to me is a slap in the face. So
without a doubt.
So let's talk about this for a second. So Justin Fields gets a start against Detroit. He goes 9 for 18, and I believe it was for 200. I'm just pulling it up here. 209 yards, no touchdowns. Did throw the interception. But the thing that bothered me most about what the Bears have done with him so far is, Jeff, they're not letting him run the ball. He had 3 rushes.
That's maybe his biggest upside, and you don't see it. The whole game plan doesn't really make sense for me. I mean, I know Montgomery got hurt later in the game, but what are you doing? Like, you're capping this guy at a certain amount of throws. You're not letting him scramble. You're not letting him run. I don't understand the game plan at all. He seems to be slowly breaking him into the offense, but I mean, Jeff, got talent. Let him go. Come on.
It doesn't even look like they have a game plan for him. It looks like he's running the same kind of playbook that Andy Dalton was running. And
that is.
And that just can't happen.
That's ludicrous. Yeah. So I know in some ways, some fantasy owners, especially if you own Darnell Mooney or Allen Robinson, you almost want Andy Dalton back because it seemed like almost a better game plan with him.
Well, we saw what Fields, he completed 11 of 17 passes, 209 yards, and he can sling it. Like, Darnell Mooney looked good. And you know what?
They definitely have a connection. I always talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
More than the eye test, the chemistry between a quarterback and a certain receiver. And Darnell Mooney seems to be that guy for Justin Fields.
And you know what? I wonder if you mentioned David Montgomery being hurt. He's out 4 to 5 weeks. I wonder if they're just going to unleash Justin Fields, let him run the ball, let him throw. Like, I don't know. Do we trust Damian Williams after not playing for a year?
Do we trust Matt Nagy to implement some kind of plan?
We don't.
He is just ridiculous. How he's still a coach, I don't know. I mean, we'll get into Sam Darnold later on, but man, he's giving Adam Gase a run for like maybe worst Q coach in the history of the NFL.
It's starting to feel like that. And, I wonder how we kind of manage more Allen Robinson going forward, because
he's the one that would worry me.
Yeah, the way I feel about Allen Robinson right now, and he's been atrocious, doesn't even begin to kind of cover how bad he's been. But like, the reason why you're so worried about Allen Robinson is because you spent a fairly high pick on him. And at a certain point in the season, it doesn't matter what you paid for a player. But
we talked about this last week too, right? Like there's these this high-end group of receivers that people
didn't produce
on, and they're just not producing at where you picked them on. But yeah, you're right. At sometime you just need production from these guys.
So Robinson right now is wide receiver 60. He has 13 catches for 149 yards and has 1 touchdown. Right. And here's how I'm kind of looking at Allen Robinson. If I put him on my bench, especially this week, he's going to blow up.
Go off.
So Allen Robinson is that type of receiver that you're going to have to ride him at least for the next 2 or 3 weeks and just kind of see like.
Well, you got to be okay with it. Just leave him in, and you got to be okay whether it's another dud like he's given us so far. Like, you just got to be okay with it.
Yeah, and you talked about the chemistry between Mooney and Fields. Mooney is a guy that probably slots into a flex spot right now.
Agreed, without a doubt.
And with no David Montgomery there, they're probably going to have to throw the ball. I see that scenario happening where, you know, it's like, hey, Damian Williams is going to get like 12 carries. Justin Fields is going to get 10. And Justin Fields is going to have to throw the ball at least 30 times here.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. They seem to be capping him under 20 throws a game like they did last game, but he threw the ball really well. So hopefully that starts to have an uptick on what they let him throw and the number of attempts. So if they does, some of those have to go to Allen Robinson. Like they really do.
Imagine saying we're going to have Justin Fields throw the ball less than 20 times. It's almost as if they drafted him and didn't watch any tape on him, which is mind blowing.
One other thing I did see, Matt, was like his numbers, especially rushing wise, were very comparable to like Kyler Murray's first 2 games. And it was really in the third game that Kyler's numbers started to go up. Like I think he had close to 70 or over 70 yards rushing in his third game, but the first 2 were low, just like Justin Fields has. So we'll look for that. Like, I don't know, like you said, hopefully they unleash him. They let him play the game that he plays and lets him like just use his legs more. And we'll see what happens.
So how do we approach Justin Fields the rest of the way? Like he's probably at this point, until he shows us something, just a bye week filler in single QB leagues is probably the way I'm approaching.
Without a doubt, but with the upside, you got to keep him. You store him on your bench because I think the breakout has to come eventually. I mean, we've seen a lot of rookie quarterbacks struggle this year, but I mean, with the talent he has and with the upside of the rushing yards, like we talked about, I think you got to keep him. Like,
yeah, I predict
it just depends who you're starting him over, right? Like,
yeah.
It depends what your other QB situation is. If it's someone like Kyler or Dak or that, you start those guys, obviously. But, I mean, over guys like Ben or I don't even know who else, but.
Ben's dead.
He's done. He's done.
I'm thinking of the line from Pulp Fiction. Zed's dead, baby. Yeah. Ben's dead, baby.
Yeah.
Like, that's where we're at with him. But we're not talking about Ben Roethlisberger right now. We don't need to talk about that tree trunk. So Justin Fields, I predicted before the season started that he was going to finish as a QB1 in terms of points per game because I wasn't sure when he was going to start. I also had him starting by week 4. Yep. I just didn't think Andy Dalton was going to get hurt. But the next guy that we're going to talk about, I said he was going to be starting by week 6. And you could make the argument that he probably should have been starting earlier than even this point that or at least it looks like he's going to. But Trey Lance.
Another guy looked really good last week in the time he got.
So some people said that he looked lost. And I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah, and certain play. Okay.
I also don't necessarily think that the San Francisco 49ers offensive line was all that impressive in that game either.
I agree with that.
But here's what we do know about Trey Lance. He goes 9 of 18, so he only completes 50% of his passes, but he completes them for 157 yards, throws 2 touchdowns, has 7 rushes for 41 yards, and in only one half of play, Jeffrey, finishes as the QB 13. Crazy. So what we do know is this. Kyle Shanahan is a smart offensive mind. He's smarter than Matt Nagy. He probably has a playbook for Trey Lance and Trey Lance only. And I think we're going to see it if Trey Lance starts. So I'm kind of approaching Trey Lance as if he's in there, he's a top 10, top 12 QB play for me every week because the coach knows how to use him.
For sure. And Shanahan even said that, you know, it was a game where he didn't look like he was ready. And that this is what comes. I mean, we even knew it at the draft, right? When they picked Trey Lance, that's why it wasn't a sure pick at number 2, but everyone knew he was going to be a bit of a project, right? Like they had to teach him some game smarts and he had to get adjusted into the league. And that's what you're seeing on certain plays, because there are plays he looks really good. And there are plays where, like you said, maybe he looks a bit lost, but again, the upside is just too huge. And with the coach, like you said, who can develop a game plan like that, I mean, sky's the limit for him once he gets going.
You can't argue with the success that he had in that game. And granted, it's against, well,
like you said, in a game he would kind of look lost, he was still the QB 13. That's insane. If things start to click for him, watch out.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, he's in a position where he also has really good skill position guys.
Yeah,
like
he's got the weapons around him. Like we just talked about Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. Like he's got Debo, he's got Ayuk, he's got Kittle, he's got like running back. Anyway, it's crazy.
It's enough that it makes you go, I'm good with that. And granted, the Seahawks defense isn't all that great this year. Mm-hmm. But he's going to go up against the Cardinals defense, who Their front four is really good,
right?
But they've given up points as well. It's not as if
they've been in shootouts, right? Like this has an opportunity to be like a shootout, which he's going to have to run, he's going to have to pass, and so the chance at big fantasy points is right there.
And I like the 7 rushes that he had, and he made the most of those rushes. Now, not all of them were called running plays for him. Some of them were just
busted plays.
Yeah, you need to scramble for your life. Like that's kind of where we were at. So I think we're both in the same breath or in the same boat, kind of looking at Trey Lance and saying, hey, he's probably, a top 12 quarterback play every week if he's in the lineup,
if he's in,
because of the coach, right?
For sure. Without a doubt. I'm with you there. Again, let me ask you, would you start him over Jameis? Yes.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Both him and Fields. Like when I was trying to think of guys, I'm just trying to think of quarterbacks here. And as a rookie quarterback, even opposed to some of the other guys we're seeing and the struggles they're having with the rushing upside these guys have, I think like they're almost your play, even on top of some of the other rookie quarterbacks that are out there starting this week.
Okay, so here's a list of guys, and we'll move on to the next topic very shortly. But here's a list of guys that have started games and kind of that are ranked, let's say from quarterback 15 to 30. So you're starting them over Zach Wilson, obviously. You're starting them over Trevor Lawrence, even though Trevor Lawrence looked pretty decent in the Thursday nighter. You're probably starting him over him. Teddy Bridgewater, probably the same. Like, are you starting them over Joe Burrow?
That one's tough. I don't know about that one. I mean, Cincinnati's looked good. Burrow's been pretty good. That one's a coin toss for me. I think
Burrow's
it would depend
QB
on the
19. QB 19. Okay, here's another one. Ryan Tannehill. That's almost a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I'm with you on that.
And then Taylor Heineke is the other one. Taylor Heineke is actually QB.
He's a 15. Gunslinger though, man. I don't know.
I know.
To be on Team Heineke.
And he does and he has a rushing touchdown. He's got 20 carries on the year. Like it's not insignificant. So we'll see where Trey Lance.
But they're right in the mix with those guys, right? Like you're saying, like those guys are always the start, and they're right in the mix with them. Like coin toss here and there. Maybe you try them depending on the matchup for both QBs, and you just take the higher upside. But man, they're right in that conversation right away with all those guys you just mentioned.
All right, let's go. Let's move on to a very intriguing player. I call him like the Swiss Army knife because he's come into the NFL. Yeah, and he's done everything from kick returns to punt returns to
everything.
Wide receiver, running back. Like the only thing
even looks like it. Like he doesn't even look like he doesn't fully look like a running back. Doesn't fully look like a wide receiver. It's just somewhere in the middle there. It's like that hybrid player. And like this year, it's like beast mode unleashed. Like I don't know who had the secret code for him in the video game.
Yeah.
But like, man, he's been insane. Okay, tell people who we're talking about, Maddie. Sorry.
If you haven't figured it out, it's Cordarrelle Patterson, who we told you that you really need to keep an eye on, and you need to go pick him up because he's going to get some usage.
Number 2 running back in PPR, number 5 wide receiver in PPR. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, that doesn't they got to figure it out. He's one
more than half of the Falcons' touchdowns. He's scoring once in every 9 touches. It's insane.
Okay, so and you just pointed out a stat that we have to talk about here because this is kind of the genesis of the conversation with Patterson. Do you hold him or do you trade him? Because if you look at, so I wrote about this
it's crazy. Sorry, go ahead, man.
For my weekly article. So among the top 24 running backs, the only other player with fewer touches than Patterson, who has 49, is Kenny Gainwell. He's the RB 24 with 32 touches. So what I'm getting at here is he's been insanely efficient. Like,
and he has been throughout his career. Like, it's not just this year. Like, I know he didn't get the usage in past years that he is getting this year, but like his career efficiency has been pretty good. If you look up his numbers over whenever he has touched the ball or has been in, like it's been good. Like I said, in Chicago, I thought like there was a chance when Montgomery was hurt before. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. It was last year. It was last year, right? Like I was surprised they didn't get Patterson involved more. Like I really was expecting. I remember picking him up, storing him, being like, "Okay, one day they're going to unleash this guy, and he's going to be all right." And like it just didn't happen. So it's crazy. He's had that efficiency, not to the same amount he has this year, but it's been still pretty good throughout his career. But so right now you're going to weigh that against the regression you got to expect. Like,
100%.
no matter what, no matter how talented he is, there's going to be some kind of regression here shortly, and you would expect it, and it would be right to expect it.
So then he becomes a flex play as opposed to a guy that you can kind of safely slot in as your RB. You could slot him in as your RB1 the way he's playing right now. But here's my
if Derrick Henry didn't exist, he'd be like the #1 guy in fantasy right now. Like, it's insane.
I know.
It's crazy.
And
so
Jeff, here's what my logic is. In Dynasty, if somebody's willing to pay a price, you need to trade him.
Yeah.
Like, make your move now, because that value is going to crater. It's like Mike Davis.
Maddie, let me ask you this though. Like, if you're doing that, who are guys you're looking at? Like, I've heard some crazy names thrown out for this guy. Who would you be looking at to try and get for him? Do you have anybody in mind you think you would do?
You're looking at guys that have struggled early.
Right.
And if you're looking at Dynasty, like a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster is probably pretty fair value. You could probably look to, the thing is, people get crazy, right?
They do get crazy. That's what I'm saying. Like, I've heard names from like DeAndre Swift to like George Kittle to,
if somebody,
and then all the way down to like T. Higgins. Yes, of course you accept that without a doubt.
You take all those. Yes, like, that's ridiculous.
And you gotta aim high, right? If you're the one throwing out the request. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like you said, it depends who needs and wants to win now, and what people are willing to give up. Like, I don't know to me, it's very interesting. Like the spectrum of guys you could maybe get, or what people are willing to give up for Patterson.
So I think realistically, you could look at something like Kenneth Gainwell and a 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
Somebody will pay that. And I'd be okay with it. Now, Gainwell's a little bit on the rise, but I would even consider Gainwell for Patterson straight up, because we've seen the struggles that Miles Sanders had. By the way, somebody predicted that he would struggle this year. I don't know who that was, but I'm pretty sure it was me. I guess I'm victory lapping Miles Sanders after 4 weeks. So that's a guy that I look to move. Now, if you can't move him, he's fine on your roster. Like, he's going to regress to what, a flex play?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You so just leave him in your lineup until you do see that regression. But I mean, he's, like I said, he scored half of the Falcons' touchdowns. So you got a pretty good bet there on a team with a lot of weapons, and they're starting to trend up. Matt Ryan had his best week yet, so we'll see where this goes. And like I said, like we talked about, he's a dual threat. He's a threat, like, in the running game and as a wide receiver. It's crazy.
And Jeff, here's kind of where we'll kind of we'll leave it on this kind of thing. Atlanta's defense sucks, so he's going to get usage. Mike Davis hasn't been good, but my concern is that eventually the Falcons are going to have to start incorporating Kyle Pitts. They're going to have to start.
Well,
they're
going to
really push Ridley,
Calvin Ridley, even Russell Gage. Like, you're looking at guys who need to step up. And like I said, if Matt Ryan starts trending up, then all these guys will become weapons, and the ball's going to have to go around. That's what I mean. You have to expect that regression. I don't care how good he is. Like, there's other weapons on that team, and they have to figure out a way to get them involved. It's insane.
Yeah, I would say put him on the trade block and see what happens. Yeah. See what comes, because you know what? Sometimes people get dumb. People get desperate. It happens. And you know what?
And if he's trending that way, maybe, you know what, maybe to our point, like, the Atlanta starts to maybe incorporate him more based on that efficiency you talked about. Who knows? But guys who are in like win now mode, you'll get somebody to bite on Patterson for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers, and specifically DJ Moore, Robby Anderson, and Sam Darnold. So let's start with Sam Darnold. He's currently QB5 on the season. He is behind Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, and Patrick Mahomes. He's also aided by the 5 rushing touchdowns that he has.
5 rushing touchdowns in 4 games, which I believe is an NFL record too, which is crazy.
And I think he leads the league in rushing touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken.
That's amazing.
Or at least he's tied or whatever. So Sam Darnold.
He's also thrown for 5 touchdowns and completed 2/3 of all his passes, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, 67.8% of his passes, 1,189 yards. He's just shy of 300 passing yards per game. Now, there were some that thought
and
that Sam Darnold.
Sorry, Maddie, let me interrupt you one more time. And the Panthers' schedule coming up is pretty easy. Like they're hitting that good ride of games right now where you can expect their offense to put up some points.
Who do they have after Dallas? They have Dallas this coming week. Yeah. And then they have
which will be a shootout. Like they're gonna have to throw to that, right? Like,
well, we saw what every team has had to throw against Dallas, even though Trayvon Diggs has looked really good this season with his 4 interceptions.
So they got the Eagles, the Vikings, the Giants, the Falcons, the Patriots, and then the Cardinals.
Sorry, Dallas was this week. Yes.
Yeah. They just yeah.
So they have a pretty favorable schedule going forward. And Sam Darnold, like Jeff, I'm not gonna lie, I am debating between starting in a 2 QB league Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold.
I don't blame you at all, for sure. And you know what the other thing is, Matty? I know we're going to get to it because talk about some of the weapons that he has, like DJ Moore. When you just get the ball to those guys, they're going to make a play and get you more points. Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, DJ Moore is having a breakout year. I know it's a year I expected from him last year. And thank you, DJ Moore, for frustrating me all the last year and then doing it this year. But like, it's incredible.
Okay, before you start with your DJ Moore slander from last year,
no, it's not slander. It's just whatever.
He was. You know what he missed last year, Jeff? He missed touchdowns.
Yeah, it's true.
And we know that's a fluke stat. You can't predict touchdowns, sure. But you know what you can predict? That DJ Moore is a lock to be a stud because the yardage was there with bad quarterbacks. Like, if you look at his last 2 seasons, DJ Moore has averaged 76 catches for 1,184 yards.
Crazy.
If he had 3 more touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons, we would be talking about DJ Moore as one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL. And that's not a question. Yep. So he's already up to 3 touchdowns on the year. And his career high was 4 before this season in his 3 previous years. He's had Cam Newton, who was broken at the time throwing him the ball, Kyle Allen, who sucks, Will Greer, who sucks, and Teddy Bridgewater. And Teddy Bridgewater was better last year, but he's not a star. Sam Darnold is proving that he might actually be a star.
Well, and again, with a coach who's game planning now, like, I think we've talked about it. We're all fans of Matt Rule, right? Like we know what he does, and like Sam Darnold showing what you can do when you got a good coach, and just maybe getting away from Adam Gase. Like, geez,
the fantasy kryptonite.
Yeah,
Adam Gase is like.
I'm gonna say the NFL kryptonite. Like he should be nowhere on the sidelines on an NFL field.
I think I've said it on this podcast. I may have said it somewhere else. Adam Gase is like to the fantasy community what jorts are to the fashion community. Not good.
That's pretty good.
It's not good.
That's pretty
good. Okay, so before
and then last week, like I'm just looking at Darnold's stats from last, like he threw the ball 39 times. Like that's insane.
And they had to play catch up with Dallas, right?
Right, for sure. So, but like if you're willing to trust your quarterback, there's huge upside there in starting Darnold. So I don't blame you for debating between him and Rodgers. And I think I'd lean towards Darnold. That's crazy.
And he is he's still available in a lot of single quarterback leagues.
True.
Like I would absolutely be picking him up and just kind of locking him into your lineup
again, especially with that schedule coming up. Like, I mean, it's been 3 games in a row. He's tossed for over 300 yards, and I don't see that slowing down at all. Like, if they're having success, they're going to keep going.
Why wouldn't you? Especially Christian McCaffrey's out, and Chuba looked fine. But
Chuba was okay. Yeah. Not great, but okay. But yeah, so they're gonna have to find other ways to score. And like I said, when you're getting the ball to DJ Moore, they'll make more plays for him.
Okay,
it's insane.
So we're locking in DJ. That's easy. Obviously, that's not rocket science. DJ Moore, you lock him in every week. You're fine with it. The guy that we're really kind of concerned about right now is Robby Anderson.
I agree 100%. But you got to think a swing upward is coming very soon. Like they just gave him a new contract. He's gonna have to be incorporated somehow. I think at like. Yeah, I don't know if I'm starting him right now, if I have the option, but like I'm still holding on to him, thinking that like there's got to be an upswing in his game coming soon.
And you did make a trade for him in our Dynasty League. I did notice that. Yes. For those that don't know, Jeff, you actually pretty much everybody wouldn't know that Jeff made a deal and sent Mike Davis to a competitor for Robby Anderson. And I thought it was a good deal by you. Jeff has, by the way, absolutely blown that team to smithereens.
I had to take it over. I did not like my team. I've gone very young. I'm just looking for the future. I don't have good quarterbacks in that league, so this league's a write-off for me this year. I don't care about it. I've just gone super young. I think all of my players are like 24 and under. Like, I'm just looking for players for my future and looking towards next year and hoping to get a QB along the way. Somewhere.
It's smart. It's smart. I would trade you Tom Brady, but he doesn't really fit into your future plans. But okay, so here's the upside for Robby Anderson. It was this past week. Now, granted, you mentioned it. They had to throw the ball 39 times to keep up with Dallas. He did receive 11 targets on those 39 passes, but he caught 5 of them for 46 yards. Before that, he had 2 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards. Before that, 6 catches, 6 targets, 3 catches, 38 yards. And then in week 1, he had just the 1 catch on 3 targets for 57 yards and a touchdown. We were all thinking that the previous relationship between these two guys, Darnold and Anderson, we thought that this was going to be a big thing. And it turns out that hasn't been all that fruitful. I do agree with you. There's got to be an upswing somewhere here. But until that point,
and again, he just signed a new 4-year deal. So yeah, he's staying on my bench, but I wouldn't be dropping him yet. I just hold on to him and see what happens, hoping for that uptick. Like, yeah, they got to incorporate him into the office. And I think once, like I said, DJ Moore is having a breakout season. I think teams are going to start keying on him, which might open up down the field for Robby. So yeah, I don't know. I'm expecting an upswing on him.
Yeah, and I think the longer that Christian McCaffrey is out, I think that's going to open up a little bit more opportunities. Now, it sounds like there's a chance that he could play in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not
placed him on IR, right? So like you would expect in 3 weeks or whatever, right?
Yeah, so the expectation is that he will be back soon. So we'll see. And
we got to give some credit to Terrence Marshall Jr., right? Like, he's looked pretty good. He's been doing all right there in that offense as well.
And he's a good player, and that's why I was kind of surprised that they took him. But it seems like every team wants to have 3 really good wide receivers because that's what works, because it's a passing league now, and you need those types of guys to make you successful. If you look, Kansas City's kind of the odd team out because they don't have 3 really good pass catchers. They have 2, but the Bills have like 4. Seattle's got 2 really good ones. Freddie Swain has been not bad. And then, you look at Dallas, you look at Pittsburgh, even though they've struggled, Cincinnati. We talked about this. All these teams, they have 3 really good wide receivers. And that seems to be a recipe for success. So I see why Carolina did it. And I trust Matt Rule to get the most out of those guys. I'm assuming that Robby Anderson is going to pick it up. Who knows? There may even be an injury that he's dealing with. That we don't
for
know
sure.
About
we don't know that, right? Yeah, for sure. And I got to say this, sorry, because people are probably cursing at me saying Terrence Marshall Jr.'s looked pretty good after a week where he only got 1 reception on 3 attempts or 3 targets for 2 yards. But like in past weeks, he's looked pretty good. Like 4 for 5.
He's a good receiver.
3 for 6. He is a good receiver, and he'll be involved in that offense too, is what I was trying to say. So
okay, so speaking of good receivers, this guy comes out of the backfield as a good receiver, Chase Edmonds, and we want to do a little kind of comparative exercise here. Who would you rather have the rest of the season, Chase Edmonds or Zack Moss? And some people will shake their heads and go, well, you're an idiot. And that's fine. I've heard that before.
Why would they say that? I mean, because it has nothing to do with the Chase Edmonds and conversation.
No. Oh, no.
They just say that to you for other reasons. Yeah,
hey, idiot.
But why would you think people would say that? I think it's a decent conversation. I mean, they're both in shared backfields. Like, I think it's a good conversation. So why would people say you're an idiot for asking that?
The reason why they'll say I'm an idiot is because they'll say, well, Zack Moss has become very touchdown dependent and he's not getting the workload that warrants that conversation. And it's
pretty sure Connor's getting a lot of taking a vulture, your favorite word again, vulturing a lot of the touchdowns away from Chase Edmonds.
For sure. He's getting the work inside the 10, which is why I think this is an interesting conversation.
And I agree with you 100%.
Chase Edmonds gets the work in the passing game. There's no question about it that he's the guy that is going to get that kind of work. So the reason why I said it was because they have similar situations. Zack Moss is currently the RB13 in points per game because we know he missed week 1. Chase Edmonds is 15 with 14.9 points per game. Zack Moss gets the kind of James Conner role inside the 5, inside the 10. He's dominated those touches for the Buffalo Bills. And Chase Edmonds hasn't. Chase Edmonds is actually the exact opposite. They use him everywhere else. So they're both part of really good offenses.
They can both catch the ball and look well doing that, like you mentioned early. Like they're both pass catching running backs.
Well, Moss is a decent pass catcher, but the Bills just don't throw the ball. Like the Bills,
not to their running backs. That's true.
No, and if you look at the usage, like I have it here, but the Bills only have 17 targets through 4 games to their running back. So it's only 4. And Devin Singletary's been used in the passing game as well as Zack Moss. So Zack Moss is kind of strictly he's going to get red zone work. He's not going to be used much in the passing game. He's probably a better option for you in standard, but nobody plays standard anymore. So we're strictly talking PPR here.
Yeah.
But what is the better upside for you? The Bills offense, the Arizona offense are the 2 best offenses in the NFL right now. I picked the 2 best running backs. They just happen to be on opposite ends of the spectrum and how they're used. For me, it's Zack Moss, because I just look at how Buffalo has used him. Josh Allen is getting his red zone carries, but Josh Allen hasn't been stealing touchdowns. Zack Moss has 5 in the first 4 in the first 3 games that he's played.
He's definitely trending in the right way with that Bills offense for sure. He's getting in there. Like at the beginning of the season, we thought maybe Singletary was leaning towards being but Zack Moss has taken that over, and he's become that back in that offense for sure. And especially in the red zone.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that when Zack Moss was scratched week 1, everybody went crazy, myself included. I said, what did Zack Moss do that he got a healthy scratch in the first week of the season? And it turns out that Buffalo just wasn't happy with where he was health-wise. It had nothing to do with ability. And clearly we've seen that, because hasn't shown any signs of his ankle bothering him and whatever else was ailing him. So he's been good. Now, having said all this, Chase Edmonds has been really good this year. He's been better than advertised.
Yep,
a lot of people were very wishy-washy on Chase Edmonds this year. It's kind of like, well, why would you take Chase Edmonds when you could just take James Conner 2 rounds later or a round later or whatever? And it turns out that when we look at when we talk about even splits in the backfield, Zack Moss is RB27, Devin Singletary RB32, James Conner RB24, and Chase Edmonds all the way up at RB12.
Well, let me say this about Edmonds. Let me add this. So his receptions ranks 3rd at running backs, only behind Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift. And even on the ground, he's averaging 5.9 yards per carry, which is first among running backs with at least 40 carries. So his in both the running game and the passing game, he's up there among running backs. Of course he's that high. Chase
Edmonds has pretty good usage. He has 43 carries in the first 4 games. So he's averaging almost 11 carries a game. And he's also averaging 5 catches a game. So you're talking a floor that's like 15 touches a week. And the only concern
especially in PPR, there's no doubt he's a must start. You have to start him. But
there's also opportunity here. It's the value touches, and he doesn't have those. Right. So while we look at Zack Moss and we talk about how efficient he's been in the red zone, he's been doing fine. He's averaging, about 11 carries, but he only has 5 catches in the 3 games. So his touches are probably 4 or 5 less than Chase Edmonds, but they're higher value because of where he gets them. And that's why I'm going with Zack Moss, because Jeff, would you be surprised if Zack Moss had 14 touchdowns at the end of this year?
No, not at all. See, and this is what I was going to say to you. The way I'd look at it right now, if you're asking me who I'd rather start right now, it would probably be Chase Edmonds, but who I'd rather have on my roster for the rest of the season, it's definitely Zack Moss, without a doubt. And of course, you're going to get those frustrating weeks from him, but long term, I think he's the guy.
And can you take a guess at how many touchdowns Chase Edmonds has?
0.
That is correct. What do we have for him, Johnny?
James Conner's getting all that work. Don't forget, I watched the Cardinals a little bit, so I know.
Yeah, you've got that hat that you're a fan of the team, and you have family that lives there, so I get it.
That's right.
So then we both kind of lean with Zack Moss for the rest of the year. We would not be shocked if Zack Moss finished with 14 touchdowns, as long as he's
healthy.
Again,
like I said, Chase Edmonds is a must start right now in PPR and probably a flex in non-PPR. You have to go with them, man.
I think at this point, Jeff, you're starting both of them with some comfort. After the first week, Zack Moss, you were kind of like, I don't know how I should approach him because he got, scratched the first week. But after that game that he played, his first game, scored the 2 touchdowns, you're kind of going, okay, we'll kind of see. Then he scores a touchdown the following week, and you go, okay, now I got to put him in, because then he scores again in the third week. So, I mean, you can't go wrong, but it's just an interesting conversation about how to approach 2 completely different running backs. Let's get to our not so 2-minute warning, because it just never works out that way. This is more of a defensive thing, but maybe you want to stay away from the Carolina Panthers when you're streaming players or playing players after their acquisition of Stephon Gilmore to go along with CJ Henderson. And then when he gets healthy, JC Horn. I really like what Carolina's done with that team, especially on offense, but their defense, maybe that's a team that you got to stay away from when you're trying to target certain players.
Without a doubt. If you're facing them, for sure. I was looking at them too. Yeah, that defense looked great in the first couple of weeks. Like you said, they got into a bit of a shootout last week. But again, look at that schedule coming up. They can defense could perform for you.
Okay, Jeff, this is something that we talked about last week, and I do want to kind of just circle back around to it.
Okay.
2 tight ends that we mentioned on last week's show.
Oh yeah, I know. I should have known this was coming for sure.
I mean, and this is not a victory lap. This is just
it's a victory parade. Like, let's go. Go for it.
Dalton Schultz, 2 touchdown catches. Dawson Knox 2 touchdown catches. And you know what? Dalton Schultz, I believe, is the tight end 3 right now on the season, and Dawson Knox is tight end 6. And people were still not picking these guys up. I think at this point, the ship is now sailed. Or sorry, Dalton Schultz is tight end 4 on the year and not 3. I apologize. But you have 2 guys in the top 6 that almost nobody was touching on the waiver wire.
That Schultz could have been maybe 3. Didn't the other tight end there, didn't Blake Jarwin get one too? Or he was close to getting one? He did. So that almost could have been 3 touchdowns for Schultz. So like, that's insane.
So here's how we can.
Good advice to maybe go look, see if they're still available and go grab them.
Oh my God, if they're still there, go lock them up. But Schultz, the interesting thing is that Amari Cooper's still battling an injury. Michael Gallup is still on the IR. And we'll see how these 2 kind of go going forward. But, I mean, Dalton Schultz is a lock start right now. And not for anything, Dawson Knox, they're looking at him in the red zone. He might be a lock start too right now.
I agree. Him and Josh Allen have really developed something there. And he looks for him and finds him in the red zone, in the end zone all the time. So, he's looking good. He gets that, and he can make catches. He's made some really great catches this year.
He doesn't have a case of the drops like he did last year and the year before.
Exactly.
That's for sure. That'll be all for us. Oh, you got one more?
No, I was going to say, give him boy Max Williams in Arizona a bit of love too. Like, he's finding the end zone, and Kyler's finding him down low when they need a touchdown there in pressure.
Another one thing maybe look for on the waiver wire.
Yes. The one thing I wanted to maybe bring up to you in this 2-minute drill is the Ravens backfield. Like, just how Sam Williams is nowhere to be found now. It seems like they're going to go full force with Latavius Murray. Any thoughts on that?
Almost like somebody predicted that Latavius Murray was going to be the guy.
I'm shocked. You could tell in that first game. I know. It's just they're doing victory laps. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah. I think Latavius Murray was going to be the guy all along. Le'Veon Bell is nothing. I do think they need to get Tyson Williams back in the lineup.
It's crazy. They seem to. I don't know why. I don't know. They don't like him at all. Like, his usage now, it seems like they've just given up on him, and he's out of that offense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that'll be all for us today on the Front 4 Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at MattyMar89, at J_party, and follow us on Twitter at Front 4 Fantasy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Get the show name right. Show name right.
We'll figure it out. At Front 4 Fantasy.
We're still new to this. It's been a long week.
We'll figure it out.
What day is it? Yeah. Go take care of your dog.
It's sometime. Yeah, I can hear him. All right. That's it. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.